Welcome to the Pharmacy Leaders Podcast with your host, Tony Guerra. The Pharmacy Leaders Podcast is a member of the Pharmacy Podcast Network, with interviews and advice on building your professional network, brand, and a purposeful second income from students, residents, and innovative professionals.
Hey, welcome to the Pharmacy Leaders Podcast, weekend edition. I am Tony Guerra, your host, and we're coming into summer, end of semester, and I may slow down a little bit. I have some students coming in the second block, but may just do one a week or something like that. I know for sure I have one guest next week, Christine Monroe, who's the director of Kobo Writing Life at Rakuten Kobo. If you've not heard of them, they sell ebooks and audiobooks. They're out of Canada and out of Toronto, and it's a way to get your books and publications out to the world. I know Amazon seems huge, but the whole global sense is much, much bigger. So I look forward to talking to her or sharing what I talked with her about. From that, I went on Kobo, and you can get a free audiobook. There's no click-through funnel or anything on my website. I'm just telling you I got a free book. But the book really relates to us as pharmacists because the book I got is called The E-Myth, Optometrist, because there was no E-Myth pharmacist, and that was kind of the closest thing I could really think of in terms of somebody that has their own practice, what pharmacy is supposed to be going to. And I really learned a lot from it, and I'm still learning a lot from it, in that so many of us are saying, oh my gosh, well, we could have our own practices, once provider status goes through. But then we have so little experience with that kind of the finances and those kinds of things that we really need that kind of training. And I think the E-Myth is the best book you can possibly have if you're going to be an entrepreneur. And I was looking at these E-Myths, and what he did was the E-Myth and the E-Myth Revisited sold millions and millions of copies. But then what he did was he branched out to make niche versions of each one. And so there's the E-Myth Attorney, the E-Myth Accountant, the E-Myth Optometrist, chiropractor, financial advisor, landscape contractor, architect, real estate brokerage, insurance store, dentist, nutritionist, and bookkeeper. And I was like, there are 3 million nurses. How could they not have done the E-Myth Nurse? There are 350,000, 400,000 pharmacists. Why didn't they do one for pharmacists? What do these all have in common? And what they all have in common that we don't have is that they can run their own show. They can have their own business. They can have a walk-in store basically with just a single or sole proprietor. And all of these, and although they do talk about practices with more people, I think many of our businesses, if that's the way we go with provider status, is going to be that's solopreneur trying to do it on their own, and Blair Telemeyer's got great advice, great content to help you with that. Aaron Albert, I know, has some content on jobs, but in terms of being able to be your own boss can be both nightmare and heaven. And the E-Myth does a really great job of making it much more towards the heaven rather than the nightmare, because there's so many things you don't think about when you are there. So the E-Myth Optometrist, it may sound like a strange recommendation, but you can usually get it on Audible or Kobo for free if you've never had something from them. So that's the only show I think I'm going to have next week. I think I'm going to chill out a little bit. I've done 105 episodes in 3 months. And I'm working on another new book. I mean, not the Memorizing Pharmacology Mnemonics. That's the one I'll start using in my pharmacology classes in fall. And the audiobook is almost done. We hope to have it done here in the next week or two. Working with another pharmacist on that. So maybe we'll have a podcast episode. And he's been a really great guy and really, really professional. And so very excited to share that with you when it comes out. On the mothership, so Monday was Medicare applications by the numbers from the Pharmacy Compliance Guide. Tuesday was successful legislative efforts of medical cannabis, the Medical Podcast. But what I want to talk about and because I was the host of the Pharmacy Future Leaders for, I don't know, I want to say it was probably a year and a half. I should go back and look and see how many episodes I did. I want to say 75. I'm not sure if that's the case. Maybe it was 50 or something like that. But I did a lot. And now Nova Southeastern has taken it over. So I'm sure that Scott, and I've heard it's pronounced two ways, Kjelsen and Chelsen. So Chelsen on Hillary's podcast, and I'll talk about that later. But I want to talk a little bit about so it was Haley Ward, Joanne Pio, Jamie Koiker, and Louis Urbina talked about IPPEs, and then part two, IPPEs and community pharmacy, and then part two is going to be IPPEs in hospital pharmacy. So I definitely recommend that you check it out. But what I want to talk about is when they start talking about preceptors. So the first thing I kind of wanted to say about preceptors is normally when you have somebody, teach you or guide you or something like that, you pay them and then they, provide whatever service it is, whatever teaching it is. So, I've gone to masterminds that were like $200 for like 3 days, or I've gone to one that was like, $5,000 for a week, and I know they can get more and more expensive. Though I think 5,000 tends to be the upper limit on most of them. But when you talk about preceptors and IPPE preceptors, I'm not an IPPE preceptor. Those shadowings, I can't do those. What we do, there's no way for you to really, you would just sit in a classroom watching me teach instead of the way that, somebody that maybe has a clinical practice does it. But I don't know. I think shadowing in retail is just kind of weird. Like, okay, after the first 15 minutes, if you're seeing somebody verify, they're verifying the whole time. But they talk about what to do if you don't get along with a preceptor. And what I wanted to kind of make sure you guys remember or address is that I understand you're paying, and so you have to kind of figure out the tuition and divide by 8. I think most schools have like 8 APPEs, so now I'm kind of switching over to the APPE. But if you're paying $40,000, and that's like around what private schools are, you're paying $5,000 per APPE experience. Okay, but what you're not doing is you're not paying the preceptor at all. Actually, it's the other way around. The preceptor has to make a space for you. The preceptor has to give time and resources to you. So it doesn't really make a lot of sense in terms of, economically. It's just something that preceptors do because they want to give back to the profession. So as they're kind of talking through this and saying, well, what if you don't like the preceptor? And I get it. The millennial generation, and I think the generation after, has gotten a lot of flack for saying that, we want things a certain way. And we have that expectation. So, for example, I come downstairs, and I don't know what generation my kids are, but the TV is off because they each have their own iPad watching their own show. So because we're in kind of that individualistic environment, when that individual match doesn't match for the appy, then maybe the student feels, well, I should be able to switch, or I should be able to change, or something like that. And absolutely, if you are paying us, but you're not, and you're paying somewhere probably between $3,000 and $7,000 per rotation. And when somebody comes to my rotation, I try to give them that value, but it's hard to do without the actual money to do it. Imagine what you could have if I had $5,000 to spend on a student for a rotation. Here's your limousine. It'll pick you up to bring you to work, and it'll take you home. You'll have no gas charges. We'll put you up at this really amazing Airbnb. It's got granite countertops. It's got it's by the beach, or you got pool, and you've got this fantastic setup where you've got a car. You've got a place to stay, and all your meals are paid for. And then, so, instead of that, it's quite the opposite. And then, maybe even pay off some of your student loans while we're at it. So it was just kind of, fun to hear, how they're talking about the preceptors and how to deal with that. And I thought they were really respectful and really did a great job. And I wanted to talk about some of the highlights. So instead of, kind of having that attitude where, this sucks, we're just not getting along, that you would say, is there something I'm doing wrong, and taking ownership for it? Because the preceptor might have other things going on that they have to take care of because there's no money coming in from the students. I understand that in many places you might feel like free labor, but it really comes down to you're just trying to build a relationship with the person. So I just definitely recommend that you listen to what they say about it. They're very positive. They are very articulate with the negatives, and I think they did a fantastic job going over it. But really understanding that a preceptor is a volunteer, and more than a volunteer, the money is going somewhere else. They would love to give it to you. I provide housing for my students, and that comes straight out of my pocket if they want to come and do a rotation with me. And again, it's a little bit unfair because I'm an academic rotation. Only people that want to do academics, it's an elective rotation, come to my rotation. So if you know you're going to be a community pharmacist and have to do hospital, or if you know you're going to be a hospitalist and have to do community, it's very tough to say, this is such a waste of my time, And whereas I'm really lucky to have only people that are interested in teaching, and I hope to give them as much value as I can. But anyway, bottom line, listen to those 4 standouts from Nova Southeastern: Haley, Joanne, Jamie, and Lewis. TLDR, so again, he's talking about like planning for next year. Yes, you can still get a residency if you didn't match this year. If we're on same pace, we should see another 300 to 400 residencies open up. And what I'm hearing now is, as it's in terms of advice for students who are graduating, the advice before was, if you don't get a residency, then you can go into retail. Well, that's certainly not the case in many parts of the country. So my advice, or what I'm getting from the students out there, from the people that email me, is that if you are in rotations, you should absolutely try to work at a possible employer. So what I'm hearing is that the retail jobs are going to those people that have already worked for them because they're a known commodity. They can just call their pharmacy manager up. Hey, such and such was thinking about applying for a job with us, wants to work full time. What do you think of him? And there's no way that you can beat, a 2-year interview where somebody was there for a couple of years than you can. And that's the opposite of what you think, where most of the time you're thinking, oh, well, I want to take off completely in my P4 year because I've got to make sure I have all the, time that I need to do these things. So I don't think that stopping working as a P4 is necessarily a good idea, especially if you're hoping to work for one of the big chains or hoping to work in community. The other thing I'm hearing is kind of, I don't want to call it backwards, but certainly counterintuitive, that all students should apply for a residency. Because, for example, and this is a numbers thing, if you apply for a job at Walgreens and there are 5 people that want it, that means that you have a 1 in 5 chance of getting it. So a 20% chance. The numbers that ASHP puts out says you've got about a 2 in 3 chance of getting a residency. So now I'm hearing that residency has become the backup where retail was before. So it's completely inverted. And I sort of understand that. What they're saying is, you've got all the way till March to decide if you're going to, match, or you're going to put your sights down. So what we're really saying, or what they're really saying with a residency, is that everyone should apply to a residency if you don't have a job lined up after school, because at least you'll have a 2 out of 3 chance to get a residency. Now, that being said, you're going to know a lot more in March than you will as you're starting, your APPEs. But I'm hearing people are starting their job searches in August and September of their P4 year, or they're working to get those relationships and getting those setups where they're going to be able to go to a certain area. So I don't want to belabor that. There's going to be plenty to talk about. But anyway, all the way back to TLDR pharmacy. I think that everyone that doesn't have a job lined up should apply for a residency, because you may actually turn and go, hey, you know what? I do want to do a residency where maybe you didn't. Or you realize through the process of actually meeting the people at the residencies, you decide the opposite. PTech annual conference. So if you're a pharmacy technician educator, that is, my daughter's birthday is Wednesday, July 11th. So I will be flying in the day after, very early in the morning, I think. But that's in Indianapolis, Indiana. You couldn't meet a better group of educators anywhere in the world. The Pharmacy Technician Educators Council, they're super amazing. And I definitely recommend that conference if you are an educator or if you are in charge of technicians. Alex Barker on the Happy PharmD came out with the 2018 Pharmacist Salary Guide. And the way that he does his salary guides he's very, not politically correct, that's not the word I want to use, balanced. It's really a summary of other places saying this is what pharmacist salaries look like. So take it with a grain of salt. It's a nice thing to have as kind of a guide, but the Bureau of Labor Statistics puts out a number back in last May, but that's certainly not the number that people are being offered as they're coming out of school. And it depends. It's truly like buying a car, where one person might, except for CarMax, where if someone goes in and pays this much, and then someone else who negotiates comes in and pays this much. Or you're talking about a different kind of car, like, well, if I were to go, Toyota always sends me these things, and I don't have a Toyota, but sends me these, ads like, hey, you can get we've got all the models on sale or whatever. And I'm like, that's not true. You never have the Highlander on sale, which my wife has. And I was like, that's the only car that I would buy. And that's just not true. So some areas you're going to have tremendous resistance to getting a job at a certain salary, and then other places there's still 3% of the graduating, 3% of people that got a job are getting sign-on bonuses, and you're like, are you kidding me? But there are some underserved areas, many underserved areas. And, just to talk about his article a little bit, I just love seeing that I've just broken the bottom 10% in academia and, for my year. But again, I believe that I'm in the top 10% in terms of happiness with my job. I absolutely love it. And this year I'm projecting that this is weird, doing nothing is actually paying more than my job. So that kind of is crazy, that my books and the books I've created and the passive income is actually going to exceed my active income. And I thought about that, and what really excited me about that was knowing that even if something were to ever happen to me, we're not even talking about life insurance, we're not even talking about settling affairs, we're just talking about there's a check going into the account every month of thousands and thousands of dollars that would pay for the house, that would pay for the kids' food, the school, and all that stuff. And so it's just a tremendous peace of mind having that passive income. And I think that's what I want to talk about this summer some. So there's an Indeed.com. It's called, it's really negative, Lies About Pharmacist Job Market. And it's been going for like 7 years. And at the bottom, it's kind of a counterpoint to the information that you'll find in the Happy PharmD's article. And so there's two or three recent posts that came up. And one says that unfortunately salaries are entering downwards. The last temporary job I got was between 51 and 56. Last average from Indeed in Oregon is 55, and then I was called about a job today, and they could only offer me 50. So the way to figure out how much a job is you just use 2,000 as the multiplier. So you multiply 2,000 times 50 because you work 2,000 hours in a year, right? So I think that works out to 100. So he could only offer me $100,000. And I guess in one hand, I get it, like compared to the national average or what the average is that's published. But on the other hand, I'm like, are you kidding me? I can only make $100,000. Like, what is going on? It's crazy talk. And then it says, per Glassdoor, the same company is paying higher market rates. Glassdoor estimates are ridiculous. Like, there were two jobs that were like 3 rows apart from the same company. One said that a pharmacist made $45,000, and these are estimates that their AI does. And then the other one was like $160,000, and it was the same job. So Glassdoor, I don't trust at all, especially not with their estimates. But then they said, this was the one before. So there was somebody talks about their salaries from 2008 to 2018 and how things are going, and then talking about the H-1B visa and what people are making, and they're saying that they're making $46 an hour. So again, 46 times 2,000, that's $92,000. You're not exactly peddling with a tin can on the corner with 92 grand a year. And if you go globally, that's like triple what the global average is, or something like that. That's what somebody makes. But they said something at the very bottom. A foreign pharmacist took my job. She was offered $35 an hour. But then I went to that website that the person cited, h1bdata.info, and I'm just not seeing that. And I don't know how reliable this site is, the H-1B salary database. But I just see that the base salaries are, and you can fix it by start date. So there are about 130, 140 that got H-1B visas in 2018. And if you're thinking about Pharmacy Nation as 350,000 pharmacists, it's a fraction of a percent. But there's, it ranged from 90,000 to 154,000 in terms of salaries. And so I saw that, it just really is so dependent on that company that's willing to hire you. But I saw that a bunch of Florida ones got certified, a bunch of Florida ones got denied. And I just know nothing about the process. Like, I know what I know from Wikipedia. But the one thing that I think would be a concern would be coming from Washington, D.C., because of that Buy American, Hire American executive order, which was planning to reform the H-1B visa system. So, again, I don't know exactly what's going on with it, but certainly something I don't know. I just like to see all the information. And when people ask me, are pharmacist salaries going down? I'm hearing that people are getting hired at less, but I'm not hearing low numbers yet. And again, I graduated in 97 making $65,000, and I was pretty darn happy about it. But then again, I paid $16,000 for all 4 years of tuition. So my hiring salary was 4 times my total tuition. So I guess I can't really complain. Let's see. So Pharmacy Joe, again, he's a great, I just want to refer him. He does a great job if you are in critical care. He really challenges you, but as a non-clinical pharmacist, his stuff just goes way, way over my head. Every once in a while, he has something kind of on maybe talking to doctors or, how to work with other people on the team, but I also recommend, I know he's got a course to help hospitalists as well, so pharmacyjoe.com. Tim on the Your Financial Pharmacist, so they talk about car buying, and I wanted to mention something that I don't remember hearing because I heard it in the optometrist, which is opportunity cost. So I pay, I cashed out of my real estate, and I pay cash anytime I buy a car. Like if I have to go replace my 2011 Traverse, I would just pay cash for it. But if you own a practice, what the E-Myth optometrist was saying was that maybe it's an opportunity cost, and that if that puts you so far in the red that maybe you shouldn't do that, because then you're going to only have certain amount of money in your war chest. But maybe think about the opportunity cost. Should you pay some of it off? Should you pay a little bit of it off? How does it fit in with your student loans and credit card debt and things like that? Again, I'm really kind of out of touch. I have no student loans. I have no credit card debt. I have enough money to pay off the house. I don't know what it is to kind of be in that position. It's tough for me to kind of go back that way, but I definitely recommend listening to it. They do a really good job of staying on what you could be talking about right now. Hillary from the Talk to Your Pharmacist podcast. So speak up and get involved with Dr. Scott Chelson, who is a dynamo down at Nova Southeastern. And he's just done, I wish he would create a podcast like PR with a Purpose or something like that, because he has business savvy as well as pharmacy savvy, and really a fantastic spokesman for the profession. But there are just not enough Scotts to go around. But I definitely recommend that you listen to Hillary Blackburn's interview with Dr. Scott Chelson. Let's see. I'd put his LinkedIn in just to see how many followers we have. I think I have 5,000. He has 10,000. RX Radio. I love his Alexa flash briefings. I don't get the Alexa flash briefings because we have one Alexa. I feel like having one Alexa is like having one black and white TV where everyone has to go around the thing. We don't have our own or anything like that. But the episode I wanted to talk about was A Mom Becomes a Pharmacist. She was a University of Florida grad. She just got hired on with CVS, and her story of being a mom, having a kid during pharmacy school, taking 5 years instead of 4, how that was a blessing. And every single person I've talked to that's taken 5 instead of 4 said it's better to take a year off in between. And I know there's the opportunity of cost of, oh my gosh, you could have gone into practice and made so much money. But I feel like we just get pushed through, or we push ourselves through so fast that we have no idea what we want to do with our lives. And having that year off was fantastic, but really almost a tearjerker, I think. A Mom Becomes a Pharmacist from RX Radio and Dr. Richard Waith. YouTubers, Paul Tran, come on, man, record something. It's been 3 weeks, but he gets 1,000 views per. So the difference between Paul and I, so we both have about 10, 11,000 followers. He has 90 videos, and I have 1,200. So I'm just very inefficient, I guess. He's just much better at that. Brian Fung has Corinne and Dennis talking about informatics. So if you're interested in IT or kind of that kind of niche, those are really fun. And I don't know what Kevin Yu is doing. Don't podcast, vlog while you're eating, all right? I mean, he's doing In and Out and mukbang, and he's talking about this and that, but it just was I couldn't hear half of what he was saying. He's just this is so delicious, keto rules, But then he talks about the best productivity habits, which came out 2 days ago, and I definitely recommend you listen to that. It's only 9 minutes. Unlike most of his stuff, it's either half an hour or an hour. So definitely productivity hacks. He's really altruistic. He shares everything that he learns, and I really enjoy his vlog. So whoa, this went a little long, half an hour, but anyway, this is probably what I'm going to talk about more. I think the first thing I might tackle is real estate. I had 7 years as a real estate agent. I don't know why I've been watching The Big Short so many times. But I was why didn't I see, the financial crisis coming? And that's because everybody I worked with had a paper. The pharmacists all, had, made X amount of dollars, were in the ratios, and there was no income, filling in thing of anything. So anyway, I think maybe I'll start with real estate, but do look out for the episode from Kobo. You'll get to learn a little bit more about what it is or how to get a book out there and maybe make a side income from that with your expertise. Otherwise, have a great week, and I will talk to you soon.
Support for this episode comes from the audiobook Memorizing Pharmacology, a relaxed approach. With over 9,000 sales in the United States, United Kingdom, and Australia, it's the go-to resource to ease the pharmacology challenge. Available on Audible, iTunes, and Amazon.com, in print, ebook, and audiobook. Thank you for listening to the Pharmacy Leaders Podcast with your host, Tony Guerra. Be sure to share the show with the hashtag #PharmacyLeaders.